October 15th, 2023. A waiter sneered at the quiet black family in the corner booth, loud enough for everyone to hear. Maybe you'd be more comfortable at the diner down the street. What he didn't know was that the man calmly cutting his daughter's food was Marcus Reed, the CEO who'd just bought the entire restaurant chain that morning. What happened when the truth came out at 9 p.m. that same night? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The autumn air in Portland, Oregon, carried the scent of rain and roasted coffee beans through the downtown streets. Neon signs flickered to life as dusk settled over the Pearl District, casting warm glows across wet pavement. Among the upscale establishments lining Northwest 23rd Avenue stood Bellamy's, a seafood house known for its oyster bar. Exposed brick walls and clientele who arrived in Teslas and tailored coats. Inside, white tablecloths stretched across 20 intimate tables. Edison bulbs hung from iron fixtures, creating pools of amber light. A jazz pianist played softly near the bar, where crystal wine glasses caught the glow like tiny prisms. The place hummed with the particular energy of Friday evening, laughter mixing with the clink of silverware, the pop of champagne corks, the murmur of deals being closed and anniversaries being celebrated. At 6:47 p.m., a silver Honda Accord pulled into the parking lot. Not the usual vehicle for Bellamy's guests. The driver's side door opened, and Marcus Reed stepped out. A man in his early 40s, with close-cropped hair, wire-rimmed glasses, and the kind of calm presence that made people look twice. He wore dark jeans, a navy sweater over a collared shirt, and leather boots that had seen a few Oregon winters. He moved to the back door and unbuckled his daughter from her car seat. 7-year-old Joy Reed clutched a worn stuffed rabbit, her hair pulled into 2 puffs decorated with bright yellow beads. She yawned, still drowsy from the drive. "Are we eating here, Daddy?" Marchie asked, eyeing the fancy building. "We are, sweetheart. Your mom picked it special." From the passenger side emerged Camille Reed, Marcus's wife of 12 years. She wore a burgundy dress and cream cardigan, her natural curls framing a face that managed to look both tired and radiant. In her arms, she carried their youngest, 3-year-old Elijah. Already asleep against her shoulder, his thumb in his mouth, they walked together toward the entrance, Marcus holding Joy's hand while Camille adjusted Elijah's weight. They looked like any family coming in from a long day. Nothing flashy, nothing demanding attention. Just people hoping for a good meal. Marcus pulled open the heavy oak door, and they stepped inside. The hostess station stood vacant. Behind it, menus were stacked beside a leather-bound reservation book. Marcus glanced around, noticing the warm glow, the soft music, the animated conversations happening at nearby tables. A waiter passed by carrying a tray of lobster tails, barely acknowledging them after a moment. A man emerged from the back, mid-30s, slicked blonde hair, sharp features, name tag reading Brandon. He approached the podium with a practiced smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Good evening," Marcus said warmly. "Table for 4, please." Brandon's gaze swept over them, the sleeping toddler, the little girl with the stuffed animal, the casual clothes. His smile tightened. "Do you have a reservation?" "No, we don't. We're just in town for the night, thought we'd try the place out." Brandon tapped the reservation book without opening it. "Friday nights are pretty packed. Most of our tables are spoken for." He gestured vaguely toward the dining room. Though Marcus could see at least 3 empty tables from where he stood, Camille shifted Elijah in her arms, her expression patient but firm. "We don't mind waiting if something opens up." Brandon hesitated, glancing back toward the kitchen as if searching for an excuse. "Well, the thing is, we have a certain atmosphere here. It can get loud. Might not be ideal with young kids." Joy tugged on Marcus's hand, whispering, "Daddy, I'm hungry." Marcus squeezed her hand gently, his voice steady. "We'll be fine with the noise. We'd really appreciate a table if you've got one." Something flickered across Brandon's face. Irritation, maybe, or inconvenience. He exhaled sharply through his nose. "Let me see what I can do." He grabbed 4 menus with an audible slap against the wood and turned without waiting. "Follow me." They wove through the dining room, past tables where couples leaned in close over wine, where groups of friends laughed loudly, where business associates shook hands. Brandon led them to the very back, near the swinging kitchen doors and the service station, a spot that caught every burst of noise from the kitchen, every clatter of dishes, every shout from the line cooks. The table was small, wedged between a service cart and the hallway to the restrooms. It was the kind of spot reserved for walk-ins nobody wanted. The table that said, "You're here, but just barely." Brandon dropped the menus onto the table. "This work for you?" Marcus surveyed the cramped corner, the flickering overhead light, the constant traffic of staff brushing past. He looked at Camille, who met his eyes with a subtle shake of her head, a silent conversation between 2 people who'd been together long enough to speak without words. But before Marcus could respond, Joy climbed into her chair, setting her rabbit on the table. "I like it here," she announced innocently. Marcus smiled at his daughter, then nodded at Brandon. "This'll be fine." "Thank you." Brandon gave a curt nod and walked away without offering water or mentioning specials. Camille settled Elijah onto her lap, the toddler still blissfully asleep. She glanced around, noticing the way other diners glanced toward them, some curious, some uncomfortable, most quickly looking away. She smoothed Elijah's hair, her jaw tight. "You okay?" Marcus asked quietly. She met his gaze. "I've had worse." Marcus opened a menu, though his mind wasn't on the food. He'd flown into Portland that morning for a meeting that had lasted exactly 47 minutes. The kind of meeting that changed everything. Signatures, handshakes, lawyers nodding in approval. By 11 a.m. the deal was done. As of this morning, Marcus Reed owned Bellamy's. Not just this location, all 14 of them across the Pacific Northwest. The acquisition had been in the works for months, a quiet negotiation handled by his team at Reed Hospitality Group. None of the staff knew yet. The announcement wasn't scheduled until Monday, but Marcus had wanted to see it for himself, unannounced, unrecognized. He wanted to know what kind of business he'd just bought, what kind of people worked here, how guests were really treated when no corporate eyes were watching. Now, sitting in the worst seat in the house with his family, he was beginning to get his answer. Joyce swung her legs under the table, studying the menu with intense focus, even though she couldn't read most of it. "What's scallops, Daddy?" "They're from the ocean, baby. Little round things. You might like them. Do they taste like chicken nuggets?" Marcus laughed softly. "Not quite." Across the restaurant, near the bar, Brandon leaned toward another server, a younger guy with nervous energy and a thin frame. "Table 32, Brandon muttered, gesturing with his chin. "Keep an eye on them. Make sure they don't get too comfortable." The younger server, whose name tag read Josh, glanced over and frowned. "Why? What's wrong?" Brandon smirked. "Just a feeling." Back at the table, Marcus set down his menu and placed his hand over Camille's. She squeezed back, her thumb tracing small circles on his palm, a gesture of solidarity, of strength. "If we've been here before, we'll get through it again." And in that quiet moment, with Joy humming to herself and Elijah breathing softly against Camille's chest, Marcus Reed made a decision. He would stay. He would order. He would watch. And by the end of the night, everyone in this restaurant would know exactly who they'd just underestimated. 10 minutes passed before anyone approached their table. Marcus watched servers glide past with trays of steaming entrees, refilling water glasses at neighboring tables, checking in with warm smiles and attentive gestures. Their own table remained untouched. No water, no breadbasket, not even a greeting. Joy had started drawing on her paper placemat with a crayon she'd pulled from her backpack, creating an elaborate ocean scene with purple fish and a green sun. Elijah had woken up groggy and confused, pressing his face into Camille's neck. She rubbed his back in slow circles, whispering comfort. Finally, Brandon reappeared, holding a small notepad. He didn't apologize for the wait. "Ready to order?" Marcus looked up calmly. "Could we start with some water, please? And maybe the kids' menu?" Brandon's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Water, right. He scribbled something on his pad without making eye contact. Kids' menu is only for children 10 and under. She's 7, Camille said evenly, nodding toward Joy. And he's 3. I'll bring one. Brandon's tone suggested he was doing them a favor. Drinks? Water for everyone, Marcus said. And could we see the wine list? Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Brandon's eyebrow twitched upward, a micro-expression of surprise, maybe doubt. He reached into his apron and produced a leather-bound wine menu, placing it on the table with deliberate slowness. Our bottles start at 75. The implication hung in the air like cigarette smoke. Marcus picked up the wine list without reaction, flipping through pages of Pinot Noirs and Chardonnays. The 2019 Willamette Valley Pinot. We'll take a bottle. Brandon wrote it down, his pen pressing harder than necessary. And food. Camille ordered first, seared salmon with roasted vegetables. Marcus asked for the ribeye, medium rare. Joy wanted the kids' pasta with butter. And Elijah, now fully awake and squirming, got the chicken tenders. Brandon collected the menus without another word and disappeared into the kitchen. Across the dining room, a woman in her 60s sat alone at a window table, working through a bowl of clam chowder. Her name was Helen Tate, a retired English teacher who came to Bellamy's every Friday evening, always ordered the same thing, always brought a book. Tonight, it was a worn copy of Toni Morrison's Beloved. Though she'd stopped reading 10 minutes ago, she'd watched the family arrive, watched Brandon's body language, the stiffness, the coldness, the deliberate neglect. She'd taught long enough to recognize prejudice in all its quiet forms, and she'd seen enough of life to know when to speak up and when to watch. For now, she watched. At the bar, 2 men in expensive suits nursed cocktails, developers who'd spent the afternoon arguing over property lines and zoning laws. The taller one, Richard, flagged down the bartender. Who's that family in the back? They look out of place. The bartender, a woman named Nina with silver streaks in her dark hair, glanced over. She'd been working at Bellamy's for 6 years and had seen her share of uncomfortable situations. Don't know them, she said carefully. But they're guests, same as everyone else. Richard shrugged. Just seems like an odd fit for this place. Nina didn't respond, but her hands moved a little more deliberately as she poured the next drink. Back in the kitchen, Brandon clipped the Reed family's order to the line. The head chef, a broad-shouldered man named Vincent, glanced at it and then at Brandon. Table 32. Vincent asked. Yeah, walk-ins. No reservation. Vincent studied the order. Quality selections, nothing cheap. They seem fine to me. What's the problem? Brandon leaned against the stainless steel counter, arms crossed. No problem. Just keeping an eye out. You know how it is. Vincent turned back to his sauté pan, jaw working. He didn't know what Brandon meant, but he didn't like the tone. Still, Vincent had learned long ago to keep his head down and focus on the food. Politics wasn't his job. Cooking was. The water arrived 12 minutes later, 4 glasses delivered by Josh, the younger server, who offered an apologetic smile. Sorry for the wait. Busy night? No worries, Marcus said kindly. Thank you. Josh hesitated, glancing toward Joy's drawing. That's a cool ocean. I like the purple fish, Joy beamed. Thank you. They're magic fish. Magic fish are the best kind, Josh said, and for a moment the tension eased, but then Brandon called from across the room. Josh, table 9 needs you. And the moment ended. Josh gave an awkward wave and hurried off. Camille took a sip of water, her eyes scanning the restaurant. She noticed the stares, some subtle, others less so. A young couple 2 tables over whispered while looking in their direction. An older man near the entrance did a double take when Elijah laughed at something Joy said. They're staring, she murmured to Marcus. I know. Does it bother you? Marcus considered the question. It bothers me that it doesn't surprise me. Camille's hand found his again under the table. They'd built a life together despite moments like these. Moments where their presence in a space seemed to require justification. Marcus had climbed from a childhood in South Chicago, where ambition was currency and survival was strategy, to running a hospitality empire worth 9 figures. Camille had earned her PhD in public health while raising 2 children and managing a household that never stopped moving. They'd earned every seat they'd ever sat in, but they still had to prove it over and over in rooms that should have simply welcomed them. The wine arrived next, Brandon uncorking it with theatrical precision, pouring a taste for Marcus. Marcus swirled, sniffed, sipped. It was excellent. Perfect. Thank you. Brandon filled both adult glasses and left without offering a toast or pleasantry. 20 minutes later, the food came out. Vincent had plated everything beautifully. The salmon glistening with herbs, the ribeye crusted perfectly, even the kids' meals arranged with care. But when Brandon delivered the plates, he practically dropped them onto the table. Joy's pasta slid slightly across the plate. Elijah's chicken tenders landed with a small clatter. "Careful," Camille said sharply. Brandon straightened, his expression cooling. "Apologies. Plates are hot. The plates are fine," Marcus said quietly. "But you might handle them with a bit more care." For the first time, Brandon looked directly at Marcus, really looked at him, and what he saw seemed to annoy him even more. A man sitting calmly, not reacting, not shrinking, not leaving. A man who wasn't playing the role Brandon had unconsciously assigned him. "Enjoy your meal," Brandon said flatly, and walked away. Helen Tate, still watching from her corner, set down her spoon. She'd seen enough. She pulled out her phone and typed a quick email to her daughter. "You won't believe what I'm watching right now," but then paused. Maybe she'd handled this herself. At the bar, Nina caught Vincent's eye as he emerged from the kitchen to check on the dining room. She tilted her head toward table 32. Vincent followed her gaze and saw the family eating quietly. The little girl swinging her legs, the father cutting food for his son. Something in Vincent's chest tightened. He'd been in kitchens long enough to know when something was off. And tonight, something was very off. Marcus cut Elijah's chicken into small pieces, handing him a fork. Joy twirled her pasta, humming to herself between bites. Camille finally exhaled, letting herself relax just slightly. "Food's good," she said. "It is," Marcus agreed, but the tension hadn't lifted. If anything, it had thickened, because as Marcus glanced around the room, he realized something troubling. This wasn't just about one bad waiter. This was about a culture that had been allowed to fester in his newly acquired restaurant. And cultures, Marcus knew, didn't change by accident. They changed when someone decided enough was enough. The Reed family had been eating for 15 minutes when Elijah knocked over his water glass. It wasn't dramatic, just a small accident, the kind that happens when a 3-year-old reaches for something beyond his grasp. Water spread across the table in a thin puddle, soaking into Joy's drawing. Oh no! Joy grabbed her placemat, trying to save her purple fish. Camille was already reaching for napkins, dabbing at the spill. "It's okay, baby." "Accidents happen," Marcus flagged down Josh, who was passing nearby with an empty tray. "Excuse me, could we get some extra napkins and maybe a towel?" Josh's eyes widened. "Oh, yes, absolutely. I'll be right back." He returned within 30 seconds, carrying a stack of clean napkins and a small towel. "Here you go. Let me help." He knelt beside the table, soaking up the water that had dripped onto the floor. "Thank you so much," Camille said warmly. "No problem at all. Kids are kids, right?" Josh smiled at Elijah, who was hiding his face in his mother's shoulder. "You're okay, buddy. It's just water." But Brandon had noticed the commotion from across the room. He strode over, his expression darkening. "What happened here?" "Just a small spill," Josh said quickly, finishing up. "Already taken care of." Brandon surveyed the damp napkins, the puddle on the floor, the disruption. His lip curled slightly. "Maybe next time you folks might consider the diner down on Morrison Street. They're more family-friendly. High chairs, plastic cups, that sort of thing." The words landed like stones. Camille's hand froze mid-motion. Marcus set down his fork slowly, his expression unreadable. Even Josh looked uncomfortable, clutching the wet towel. Helen Tate, who'd been listening from 2 tables away, set down her wineglass with an audible clink. Her voice cut through the ambient noise, clear and sharp. "Excuse me, young man?" Brandon turned, surprised. "Ma'am?" "That family has been nothing but gracious since they arrived. Perhaps you should reconsider how you speak to paying customers." Brandon's face flushed. "With all due respect, Mrs. Tate, I'm just trying to maintain the atmosphere our guests expect." "The atmosphere I expect," Helen said, her voice steady as steel, "is one of basic human decency. That family has every right to be here." Other diners had started to notice. Conversations quieted. Eyes shifted toward the back corner. Brandon forced a tight smile. "Of course they do." "I was simply offering a suggestion." "Your suggestion," Helen said, "sounded an awful lot like an instruction to leave." Brandon opened his mouth, then closed it. He glanced toward Marcus, who sat perfectly still, watching the exchange with an expression that gave nothing away. Brandon felt suddenly exposed, as if he'd miscalculated something important. "I apologize if I gave the wrong impression," he said stiffly. "Enjoy your evening." He walked away, but his hands were clenched. Josh lingered, embarrassed. "I'm really sorry about that. You guys are great. Your kids are great." Marcus smiled faintly. "Thank you." "We appreciate you." Josh nodded and hurried off, shooting a worried glance at Brandon's back. Camille exhaled slowly, her shoulders tight. Joy had gone quiet, picking at her pasta without enthusiasm. Even Elijah seemed to sense the tension, staying unusually still in his mother's lap. "You want to leave?" Marcus asked quietly, meant only for Camille. She met his eyes. "Do you?" "No." "Then we stay." At the bar, Richard, the developer in the expensive suit, leaned toward his colleague. "Did you hear that?" The waiter basically told them to get out. His colleague, a quieter man named Alan, frowned. "That's not okay. It's more than not okay. That's lawsuit territory." Nina, the bartender, was polishing glasses, but had heard everything. Her jaw was tight. She'd worked in service long enough to know that what just happened wasn't a misunderstanding. It was deliberate, and she'd stayed silent too many times before. She set down the glass and walked toward the kitchen. Inside, Vincent was plating an order of seared scallops when Nina pushed through the doors. "Vincent, we have a problem." He glanced up. "What kind of problem?" "Brandon just told a black family with 2 little kids that they should go eat at a diner instead." In front of everyone, Vincent's hands stilled. He said, "What?" "You heard me. And it's not the first thing tonight. He's been icing them out since they walked in." Vincent set down his tongs, wiping his hands on his apron. "Where's the manager?" "Stephanie left early. Said she had a migraine." "It's just Brandon running on the floor." Vincent swore under his breath. Stephanie, the general manager, was the only person who could rein Brandon in. Without her, the man operated like he owned the place. "What do you want me to do?" Vincent asked. "I don't know. But someone needs to do something before this gets worse." Vincent looked toward the doors that separated the kitchen from the dining room. He could hear the low hum of conversation, the clatter of silverware, the muted notes of the piano. Everything sounded normal. But he knew it wasn't. Back in the dining room, Brandon approached the service station where Josh was refilling water pitchers. "What were you doing over there?" Brandon hissed. Josh blinked. "Helping with the spill." "That's our job?" "Your job is to follow my lead. I seat people where they belong. I decide how much attention they get. You don't undermine me by playing nice." Josh stared at him. "They're just a family, Brandon. They're walk-ins taking up a table on our busiest night. And now they've caused a scene. They didn't cause anything." "You did." Brandon's eyes narrowed. "Watch yourself, Josh. You've been here 3 months. I've been here for 4 years. Don't forget that." Josh bit back whatever he was about to say and walked away, his face burning. At her table, Helen Tate pulled out her phone and opened the Yelp app. She'd never left a negative review in her life. Believed in giving people grace, in speaking directly rather than hiding behind screens. But tonight felt different. Tonight felt like something that needed to be documented. She began typing, "I've been a loyal customer of Bellamy's for years. But tonight, I witnessed behavior that I can no longer ignore. The Reed family continued their meal, though the joy had been drained from it. Joy had abandoned her pasta halfway through, curling up against her father's side. Elijah had fallen back asleep, his head resting on Camille's chest. Marcus finished his steak methodically, each bite deliberate, his mind working. He'd seen enough. He signaled for the check. Brandon appeared with the leather billfold, placing it on the table without a word. The total came to $240. Marcus pulled out his Black American Express card, the kind with no spending limit, the kind that required a certain level of income to even qualify for, and placed it on top of the receipt. Brandon picked it up, glanced at the name embossed on the card and froze. Marcus J. Reed. His face went pale. He stared at the card, then at Marcus, then back at the card. "Is there a problem?" Marcus asked calmly. No problem. I'll run this right away." Brandon walked toward the register on legs that suddenly felt unsteady. His mind raced. Marcus Reed, why do I know that name? And then it hit him, the email that had gone out to all staff 2 weeks ago. The one most people had skimmed and forgotten. The one announcing that Bellamy's Restaurant Group had been acquired by Reed Hospitality Group, effective October 15th. The one that said the new owner would be visiting locations soon to evaluate operations. Brandon's hands shook as he swiped the card. No, it can't be him. There's no way. But when he returned to the table and handed back the card, he looked at Marcus with new eyes and saw something he'd missed before. The quiet confidence. The expensive watch is half hidden under a sweater sleeve. The way he carried himself, not with arrogance, but with authority. "Thank you for dining with us," Brandon managed, his voice hollow. Marcus took the receipt, added a 15% tip, not generous, not insulting, just neutral, and signed his name in clear, deliberate script. "Have a good night," Marcus said. He stood, lifting Joy into his arms. Camille gathered Elijah and her purse. Together they walked toward the exit. Every eye in the restaurant followed them. Helen Tate gave a small nod as they passed. Nina watched from behind the bar, her expression unreadable. Vincent had emerged from the kitchen and stood near the doorway, arms crossed, jaw tight, and Brandon stood frozen at the service station. Watching the family leave, the name on that credit card burned into his memory. The door closed behind them with a soft chime. For a moment, the restaurant was utterly silent, and then, slowly, the whispers began. The door had barely closed behind the Reed family when Brandon's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out with trembling fingers, his face still drained of color. The screen showed a text from Stephanie, the general manager. "Just got an email from a corporate. New owner is in town. Might stop by unannounced. Keep everything tight." Brandon's stomach dropped. He opened his email app, scrolling frantically through his inbox until he found it. The message from 2 weeks ago that he'd barely skimmed. His eyes caught on the key phrases, Reed Hospitality Group. Marcus Reed, CEO. Evaluation period. All locations. There was a photo attached. Professional headshot. Wire-rimmed glasses. Close-cropped hair. The same face that had just sat calmly in the worst seat in the restaurant while Brandon systematically humiliated him and his family. "Oh, God," Brandon whispered. "Oh, God, no." Josh was restocking napkins at the service station when he noticed Brandon's expression. "You okay, man?" "You look like you're gonna pass out." Brandon couldn't speak. He just stared at his phone, at the photo, at the name that now felt like a death sentence. Nina appeared beside them, arms crossed. "What's wrong with you now?" Brandon's voice came out strangled. "That family. The one that left. What about them?" "That was Marcus Reed," Nina frowned. "Who? Marcus Reed!" Brandon's voice cracked. "The guy who bought the company. The new owner. He owns this restaurant. He owns all of them." The blood drained from Josh's face. "Wait, what?" Nina grabbed Brandon's phone, scanning the email. Her eyes widened. "You've got to be kidding me." "I told him to go to a diner," Brandon said, his voice hollow. "I seated him by the kitchen. He couldn't finish." The reality was crashing over him in waves. Words spread through the restaurant like wildfire. Vincent emerged from the kitchen, summoned by Nina's urgent wave. When she showed him the email, his jaw clenched. "That's who that was." The family you've been treating like garbage all night? Brandon couldn't meet his eyes. Do you have any idea what you've done? Vincent's voice was low and dangerous. Do you have any idea what this means for all of us? At the bar, Richard overheard the commotion and leaned toward Alan. Did you hear that? That was the new owner. The guy with the kids. He owns this place. Alan's eyebrows shot up. The one the waiter told to leave. That's the one. Richard let out a low whistle. That wait is finished. Helen Tate had also caught fragments of the revelation. She closed her laptop, gathering her things. She'd been coming here for years, had tipped well, had recommended Bellamy's to friends. But something had broken tonight. Something that couldn't be easily repaired. She approached the hostess stand, where Brandon stood frozen, surrounded by staff. "Young man," she said quietly. Her voice carried the weight of decades of teaching, of correcting, of guiding young people through their mistakes. "I hope you understand what you've done here tonight. That family showed you more grace than you deserved, and now you'll have to live with that." Brandon's eyes were glassy. "Mrs. Tate, I didn't know." "That's exactly the problem," Helen interrupted. "You didn't know, and because you didn't know, you felt entitled to treat them as less than. What if he hadn't been the owner? Would it have been acceptable then?" Brandon had no answer. Helen picked up her purse. "I won't be returning, not unless something fundamental changes here." She walked toward the exit, her footsteps echoing in the suddenly quiet restaurant. Other diners had begun to understand what happened. Whispers rippled from table to table. A woman near the window pulled out her phone, already typing. A young couple by the fireplace looked at each other with wide eyes. The developers at the bar shook their heads in disbelief. Vincent turned to Nina. "Where's Stephanie?" "Home. Migraine. Call her. Now. She needs to know about this before—" His phone rang. Vincent looked at the caller ID and his face went pale. "It's corporate." Everyone fell silent. Vincent answered. "Hello? Yes, this is Vincent. Yes, I'm the head chef. Yes, he was here." He listened, his expression growing darker. "No, ma'am, he wasn't given VIP treatment. Actually, there was an incident." More listening. "I understand." "Yes, ma'am. I'll make sure everyone stays until you arrive." He ended the call and looked around at the assembled staff. That was Lauren Chen, VP of Operations for Reed Hospitality. She's 20 minutes away. "She wants everyone who worked tonight to stay." Brandon swayed on his feet. Josh looked like he might be sick. Nina's face was grim. "What's going to happen?" Josh asked quietly. Vincent shook his head. "I don't know, kid, but it's not going to be good." In the parking lot, Marcus buckled Joy into her car seat, while Camille settled Elijah on the other side. The night air was cool, carrying the scent of rain. The sounds of the city, distant traffic, a siren somewhere, the low hum of conversation from a nearby bar felt grounding after the stifling tension inside. Joy yawned, clutching her rabbit. "Daddy, why was that man so mean?" Marcus paused, his hand on the car door. "How do you explain prejudice to a 7-year-old? How do you tell your daughter that sometimes people will judge her before they know her, will see her skin before they see her heart? Some people make mistakes, sweetheart. They forget that everyone deserves kindness. Did we do something wrong?" "No, baby. You didn't do anything wrong. Not a single thing." Camille met his eyes over the roof of the car. "You okay?" Marcus considered the question. "I've been thinking about that place for months. Did all the research, looked at the numbers, visited 3 locations. Thought I knew what I was buying." He paused. "I didn't know this. You couldn't have, but I should have looked harder. Asked different questions. Been less focused on profit margins and more focused on—" He trailed off, searching for the word. "Culture," Camille finished. "Yeah, culture." His phone buzzed. A text from Lauren Chen, his VP of Operations. "Just heard what happened. I'm headed to the Portland location now. Do you want me to handle this, or do you want to be there?" Marcus typed back, "I'll be there. Give me 30 minutes." He looked at Camille. "I need to go back," she nodded. She'd known he would. "We'll go to the hotel. Call me when you're done. This might take a while. Then it takes a while." She touched his face gently. "Go do what you need to do. But Marcus, don't let anger make the decisions. You're better than that. He kissed her forehead, then leaned into the back seat to kiss both kids. "I love you guys." "Love you, Daddy," Joy mumbled, already half asleep. He watched them drive away, their taillights disappearing into the Portland night. Then he turned back toward Bellamy's, his jaw set, his mind clear. It was 8:47 p.m. Inside the restaurant, the remaining diners had begun to leave. Some paid quickly and departed without comment. Others lingered, curious about what would happen next. The staff moved through their closing duties in tense silence, wiping tables, restocking stations, avoiding eye contact with Brandon. Brandon sat at the bar, head in his hands. Josh stood nearby, uncertain whether to offer comfort or keep his distance. Nina poured herself a glass of water, her movements mechanical. Vincent was in the kitchen, shutting down the line, when one of the line cooks approached. "Chef, is it true? Did Brandon really disrespect the new owner?" "Yeah," Vincent said quietly. "It's true. What's going to happen to us?" "I don't know. But we keep working. We keep our heads up. We didn't do anything wrong." The line cook nodded, but his face was uncertain. At 9:03 p.m., a black Tesla pulled into the parking lot. Lauren Chen stepped out, a woman in her late 30s, sharply dressed, carrying a leather portfolio. She walked through the front door with the bearing of someone who'd handled crises before. Behind her, 30 seconds later, came Marcus Reed. The moment he entered, every head turned. The remaining staff froze. Brandon looked up from the bar, his face ashen. Marcus didn't look angry. He didn't look vindictive. He looked calm, measured, and utterly in control. Lauren spoke first, her voice clear and professional. "I'm Lauren Chen, VP of Operations for Reed Hospitality Group. As of this morning, we are the owners of this establishment. This is Marcus Reed, our CEO." She gestured toward Marcus, who stepped forward. "Good evening," Marcus said quietly. "I think we need to have a conversation." The door locked behind them with a soft click, and in that moment, everyone in Bellamy's understood. The night was far from over. The dining room had been cleared of customers. Only staff remained, 10 people in total, standing in a loose semicircle near the center of the restaurant. The warm ambience that had filled the space hours earlier now felt heavy, oppressive. The jazz piano sat silent. The Edison bulb seemed dimmer. Marcus stood near the hostess stand, hands in his pockets, his posture relaxed, but his presence commanding. Lauren Chen stood beside him, tablet in hand, ready to document everything. Brandon stood at the front of the group, his face pale, his hands clasped in front of him like a defendant awaiting sentencing. Josh stood to his left, eyes downcast. Nina and Vincent anchored the edges of the group. The other servers, bussers, and kitchen staff filled in the gaps, all wearing expressions of uncertainty and fear. Marcus let the silence stretch for a moment, not to intimidate, but to let everyone settle, to let the weight of the evening sink in. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm, almost gentle. "I want to start by saying something important. I didn't come back here tonight to humiliate anyone. I didn't come back for revenge or to make a scene. I came back because what happened tonight matters. And if we don't address it now, honestly and directly, it will happen again." He paused, making eye contact with each person. "Some of you probably know who I am by now. For those who don't, my name is Marcus Reed. As of this morning, I'm the owner of Bellamy's, all 14 locations. I came here tonight with my family, not as a CEO or an investor, but as a customer. I wanted to see what kind of business I just bought. I wanted to understand the culture, the service, the experience." His eyes found Brandon. "And I got my answer." Brandon's shoulders sagged. Marcus continued, his tone still measured. "My wife and I, we brought our 2 kids, 7 and 3 years old. We walked in hungry, tired from traveling, just looking for a good meal. We didn't ask for special treatment. We didn't demand anything. We just wanted to be treated like everyone else." He stepped forward slowly, his hands still in his pockets. "But that's not what happened. From the moment we walked through that door, we were treated as if we didn't belong. We were seated at the worst table in the restaurant, by the kitchen, near the bathrooms, where noise and traffic would ensure we couldn't enjoy our meal. We waited 10 minutes for water while other tables were served immediately. Our food was delivered carelessly. And then he paused, his jaw tightening almost imperceptibly. And then we were told, in front of our children and a room full of strangers, that maybe we'd be more comfortable at a diner down the street. The words hung in the air like smoke. Josh closed his eyes. Nina's hand came up to cover her mouth. Vincent's jaw worked silently. The rest of the staff shifted uncomfortably. Brandon's voice came out hoarse. "Mr. Reed, I'm so sorry. I didn't know." Marcus held up a hand gently but firmly. "Stop, right there!" His voice remained calm, but there was steel underneath. "You didn't know. That's exactly the problem, Brandon. You didn't know who I was. And because you didn't know, you felt justified treating me and my family as less than. As if we were an inconvenience. As if we didn't deserve basic respect." He took another step forward. "But here's the question you need to ask yourself. Would it have been okay if I wasn't the owner? If I was just a regular guy, a teacher or a mechanic or someone working 2 jobs to take his family out for one nice dinner, would it have been acceptable then?" Brandon's face crumbled. No, it wouldn't. Then why did you do it?" The question was asked without aggression, without accusation. It was an invitation to truth. Brandon struggled to find words. I don't know. I saw you walk in and I made assumptions. About who you were, what you could afford, whether you'd fit in here. And his voice broke. "I was wrong. I was so wrong, and I'm sorry." Marcus nodded slowly. "I appreciate that. But sorry isn't enough. Not by itself." He turned to address the entire group. "Let me tell you something about my journey. I grew up on the south side of Chicago. My mom cleaned houses. My dad drove a truck. We didn't have much, but we had dignity. And my parents taught me that how you treat people, especially when no one's watching, especially when those people can't do anything for you, that's who you really are." His voice softened, becoming more personal. "I worked in restaurants when I was 16. Bussed tables, washed dishes, did prep work. I know what it's like to be invisible in a place like this. I know what it's like to serve people who look through you like you're furniture. And I swore that if I ever built something of my own, it would be different." Vincent spoke up, his voice respectful but firm. "Mr. Reed, most of us had nothing to do with what happened tonight. We didn't know Brandon was treating you that way until it was too late." Marcus turned to him. "You're Vincent, right? Head chef?" "Yes, sir. Your food was excellent. Really outstanding. And you," he pointed to Josh, "you were kind to my daughter. You helped clean up when my son spilled water. You treated us like people." He looked at Nina. "And you, behind the bar. I saw you watching. I saw the look on your face. You knew something was wrong." Nina nodded. "I did. And I should have said something sooner." "Maybe," Marcus agreed. "But you're not the one who created the problem. He is." He gestured toward Brandon. "But here's the thing. This isn't just about one person. This is about a culture that allowed this to happen. A culture where someone felt comfortable treating customers this way because he thought he could get away with it." Lauren Chen stepped forward, her voice professional but warm. "Which is why we're implementing immediate changes. Starting tomorrow, all Bellamy's locations will undergo mandatory training on equity, inclusion, and service excellence. We'll be bringing in external consultants to audit our practices. And we'll be creating clear protocols for handling discrimination, whether it's from staff or from customers," Marcus continued. "But training alone won't fix this. What fixes this is people making a choice. Every single day, every single interaction, to see the humanity in whoever walks through that door. To treat them with dignity, regardless of what they're wearing, how they speak, or what they look like." He walked closer to Brandon, stopping a few feet away. "I'm not going to fire you tonight." Brandon's head snapped up, eyes wide with disbelief. "But understand this," Marcus continued. "You're on probation. You're going to complete every hour of that training. You're going to shadow our best servers at other locations. You're going to learn what real hospitality looks like. And if I hear about one more incident, if anyone tells me you've treated a single customer with anything less than respect, you're done. Not just here. I'll make sure every restaurant in this city knows what happened tonight." Brandon's voice was thick with emotion. "Thank you. Thank you for the chance. I won't waste it. Marcus nodded, then addressed the group again. I want to be clear. I'm not interested in running a restaurant where people are afraid. I'm interested in running a place where people are proud. Proud of the food, proud of the service, and proud of how they treat every person who walks through that door. He pulled out his phone and held it up. My daughter drew a picture tonight while we were waiting for service. Purple fish in the ocean. Magic fish, she called them. She was excited to be here. And by the end of the night, she asked me why the man was so mean to us. His voice caught just slightly. That's what I'll remember about tonight. Not the disrespect to me, but the confusion in my 7-year-old's eyes when she realized that someone judged us before knowing us. The room was utterly silent. So here's what's going to happen, Marcus said, his voice strengthening. We're going to rebuild this culture. All of us, together. Not because I'm demanding it, but because it's the right thing to do. And I'm going to be checking in regularly, sometimes announced, sometimes not. Because I need to know that the business I'm building is one I'd be proud to bring my family to. He looked around the room one last time. Questions? Josh raised his hand tentatively. Mr. Reed, what made you want to buy Bellamy's? Marcus smiled faintly. I saw potential. Good food, good locations, loyal customers. But I also saw an opportunity to create something better, to prove that you can run a successful business without compromising on values. That's what I'm trying to build, not just here, but at every property we own. Vincent spoke next. What can we do? Those of us who want to help make this right. Hold each other accountable, Marcus said simply. If you see something wrong, say something. Don't wait for management. Don't assume someone else will handle it. Be the standard, Nina nodded. We can do that. Marcus checked his watch. It was 9:52 p.m. It's late. You've all had a long night. Go home, get some rest. We'll reconvene Monday morning to start fresh, Lauren added. You'll all receive an email by tomorrow with details about the training schedule and new policies. Please read it carefully. As the staff began to disperse, gathering their belongings and heading toward the exits, Brandon lingered. He approached Marcus hesitantly. Mr. Reed? Marcus turned. I want you to know that I heard everything you said, and I'm going to prove to you that I can change, that I can be better. Marcus studied him for a long moment. Then do it. Don't tell me. Show me. Brandon nodded, his eyes glistening, and walked away. When the last staff member had left, Marcus stood alone with Lauren in the empty restaurant. She closed her tablet and looked at him. That was handled perfectly, she said. Marcus shook his head. It shouldn't have had to be handled at all. Maybe not. But it was. And now it's a turning point, she paused. You could have destroyed him tonight. You could have fired him on the spot, made an example of him. But you didn't. Because that's not who I want to be, Marcus said quietly. My kids were watching tonight, not physically, but they'll remember how I responded. Camille will remember. And I want them to see that you can be strong without being cruel. That accountability doesn't require destruction, Lauren smiled. That's why you're the boss. They walked together toward the exit. Marcus paused at the door. Looking back at the empty dining room, the tables reset for tomorrow, the lights dimmed, the space waiting for a new day. We're going to make this place better, he said. I know we will. They stepped out into the cool Portland night. The door locking behind them. Inside Bellamy's, everything looked the same. But something fundamental had shifted, and come Monday morning, nothing would ever be quite the same again. Monday morning arrived with gray skies and light rain, typical for Portland in October. At 7:30 a.m., the staff of Bellamy's began arriving for the mandatory meeting Marcus had called. They entered through the back door, shaking rain from their jackets, greeting each other with uncertain nods and quiet good mornings. The dining room had been rearranged. Tables had been pushed aside to create an open space with chairs arranged in a circle. Not rows, not a lecture hall setup, but a circle. It was intentional. Marcus wanted conversation, not hierarchy. Brandon arrived early, his face drawn. He'd barely slept over the weekend. Josh came next, offering Brandon a brief, sympathetic glance. Nina followed, her expression determined. Vincent walked in, carrying a thermos of coffee, nodding to his team. By 7:55, everyone was seated. At 8 a.m. sharp, Marcus entered with Lauren Chen and two other people, a black woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a leather notebook, and a younger Latino man carrying a projector case. Marcus began without preamble. "Good morning. Thank you for being here. I know some of you probably spent the weekend worried about your jobs, about what today would look like. So let me start with this. If you're sitting in this room right now, you still have a job. Nobody's being fired today." The collective exhale was almost audible. "But," Marcus continued, "things are going to change. And change isn't always comfortable. This is Dr. Patricia Owens." He gestured to the woman with the notebook. "She's a consultant who specializes in equity and inclusion training in the hospitality industry. And this is Roberto Sanchez, our new Director of Staff Development for the Pacific Northwest region." Dr. Owens stood, her voice warm but authoritative. "I'm not here to lecture you or make you feel guilty. I'm here to help you build skills. Over the next 4 weeks, we'll be meeting twice a week for training sessions. We'll cover unconscious bias, cultural competency, conflict de-escalation, and what true hospitality looks like when it's rooted in respect," Roberto added. "And I'll be working one-on-one with each of you to identify growth opportunities. This isn't punishment. It's professional development. We're investing in you because we believe you can be excellent." Brandon raised his hand tentatively. What if we mess up during the training? What if we say the wrong thing?" Dr. Owens smiled gently. "Then we'll talk about it. Growth happens through mistakes, not in spite of them. The goal isn't perfection. It's progress," Marcus spoke again. "There are also going to be structural changes. Starting today, we're implementing a new feedback system. Every customer will receive a follow-up email asking about their experience. Not just the food, but how they were treated. That feedback comes directly to me and Lauren." Nina spoke up. "That's good. We should know if something's wrong." "Exactly," Lauren said. "And we're also creating an anonymous reporting system for staff. If you see discrimination, whether it's toward a customer or another employee, you can report it without fear of retaliation." Vincent leaned forward. "What about hiring? Are we bringing in new people?" "We are," Marcus confirmed. "We're expanding the team and making a deliberate effort to hire staff that reflects the diversity of Portland. Different backgrounds, different perspectives. It makes us stronger." Over the next 2 hours, Dr. Owens led them through the first session. She asked each person to share a time they felt judged unfairly. The stories came slowly at first. Josh talked about being dismissed as just a college kid at his previous job. Nina described being catcalled and harassed as a young bartender. Vincent shared a story about being mocked for his accent when he first came to the U.S. from Italy. When it was Brandon's turn, he hesitated. "I grew up in a small town. Pretty homogeneous. I didn't really interact with people different from me until college. And even then I stayed in my bubble. I realize now that I've been carrying assumptions I didn't even know I had." Dr. Owens nodded. "That's honest. And honesty is where change begins." By the end of the session, something had shifted. The tension had eased, replaced by something tentative but real: hope. 3 weeks later, Bellamy's had transformed in visible and invisible ways. The first thing guests noticed was the new sign near the entrance, a wooden plaque that read, "Everyone is welcome here. Every background, every story, every family. You belong." Inside, the changes were deeper. Brandon had completed his shadowing at 3 other Reed hospitality locations, learning from servers who embodied the values Marcus wanted. He'd watched a server in Seattle spend 20 minutes helping an elderly immigrant couple navigate the menu in broken English. He'd seen a host in Tacoma seat a family with special needs children at the best table in the house without hesitation. It changed him. Now, back at Bellamy's, Brandon greeted every guest with genuine warmth. When a young couple walked in dressed casually, he seated them by the fireplace. When a family with 4 rowdy kids arrived, he smiled and said, "We love energy here. Let me get you set up." Josh had been promoted to senior server. He took his role seriously, mentoring newer staff and modeling the kind of attentive, Judgment-free service Marcus had envisioned. Nina had been given authority to intervene if she witnessed problematic behavior. One night, when a drunk customer made a racist comment toward a busser, Nina calmly but firmly asked the customer to leave. "We don't tolerate that here," she'd said. The customer had protested, threatened to complain. Nina had simply replied, "You're welcome to, but you're still leaving." Marcus had backed her completely. Vincent had expanded the menu to include dishes that reflected Portland's diversity. Korean-inspired short ribs, Ethiopian spiced lamb, Jamaican jerk salmon. The food told a story now. This was a place for everyone. The staff had bonded through the training. They held each other accountable, not through call-outs, but through gentle corrections and shared learning. When someone slipped into old patterns, making assumptions, giving unequal service, their colleagues noticed and said something. Friday night. 4 weeks after the incident, Helen Tate returned to Bellamy's for the first time since walking out. She'd received a personal call from Marcus, inviting her back and promising that things had changed. Skeptical but curious, she accepted. Brandon was at the hostess stand when she arrived. His face paled slightly, but he stepped forward. "Mrs. Tate, it's good to see you." She studied him carefully. "Is it really different, Brandon? Or is this just performance?" "It's different," he said quietly. "I'm different. And I hope you'll give me the chance to show you." She allowed him to seat her at her usual table by the window. Josh was her server, greeting her with genuine enthusiasm. The service was impeccable. But more than that, it was warm, authentic. Halfway through her meal, Marcus appeared. He'd made it a habit to visit the Portland location every Friday evening, usually staying for a few hours to observe and connect with staff. "Mrs. Tate," he said, approaching her table. "Thank you for coming back." She set down her fork. "I almost didn't, I understand, but I'm glad I did. This feels different. It feels like a place that means what it says." Marcus smiled. "That's all I can ask for. Thank you for holding us accountable." She raised her wine glass. "To new beginnings." "To new beginnings," Marcus echoed. That same night, a young black couple walked in, no reservation, dressed in jeans and hoodies after a long day. Brandon greeted them immediately. "Good evening. Welcome to Bellamy's, table for 2. "Yes, please," the man said, a little surprised by the enthusiasm. Brandon grabbed 2 menus. "I have a great spot for you right by the fireplace." "Follow me." He led them to one of the best tables in the house. "Your server will be right with you. Can I start you off with some water?" "That'd be great, thank you." As Brandon walked away, the woman leaned toward her partner. "Did we just get the good table?" "I think we did." "Weird. That never happens to us." At the service station, Josh watched Brandon moving through the room with new confidence, new purpose. He caught Brandon's eye and gave him a small nod of approval. Brandon nodded back, something like pride flickering across his face. Later that night, after service ended, Marcus gathered the staff for a brief meeting. "I just want to say thank you. I've been watching, and what you've built over these last few weeks, this culture we're creating, it's real. It's not perfect, and it won't always be easy. But it's real," Nina spoke up. "We're proud of it, Mr. Reed. We're proud to work here now." Vincent added, "The kitchen's never felt this good. Everyone's invested. Everyone cares." Brandon cleared his throat. "Mr. Reed, I just want to say again, thank you for not giving up on me. I know I didn't deserve a second chance, but you gave me one anyway. And I'm going to spend every shift proving it was worth it." Marcus met his eyes. "You already have, Brandon. Keep going." As the staff filtered out into the rainy night, Marcus stood with Lauren in the empty restaurant. "You did it," she said. "You turned this place around." "We did it," Marcus corrected. "All of us," Lauren smiled. 13 more locations to go. 13 more opportunities," Marcus said. "Let's make sure every single one reflects this." They locked up and stepped into the cool October air. The rain had stopped. Streetlights glistened on wet pavement. Somewhere in the distance, the city hummed with life. And inside Bellamy's, behind locked doors, everything was ready for tomorrow. A new day, a better standard, a place where everyone truly belonged. 6 months later, April 2024 spring had arrived in Portland, bringing cherry blossoms and longer days. Bellamy's had not only survived the transformation, it had thrived. Reservations were up 32%. Online reviews had shifted from mixed to overwhelmingly positive. But more importantly, something intangible had changed. The restaurant had become a destination, not just for food, but for the experience of being genuinely welcomed. Marcus stood in the back office, reviewing quarterly reports, when Lauren knocked on the doorframe. "Got a minute? There's something you should see." She pulled up an article on her tablet, a feature in Portland Monthly magazine titled, "How One Restaurant Became a Model for Inclusive Hospitality." The piece detailed the changes at Bellamy's, interviewing staff members about the training, quoting customers about feeling seen and valued, and highlighting Marcus's leadership approach. But what caught his attention was a quote from Brandon. "I was given a choice that night, defend my prejudices or confront them. Mr. Reed didn't let me hide from what I'd done, but he also didn't destroy me for it. He showed me that accountability and grace aren't opposites, they're partners. That changed everything for me, not just as an employee, but as a person." Marcus set down the tablet, his throat tight with emotion. "The training model you developed here," Lauren said. 3 other restaurant groups have reached out asking if they can implement it. Dr. Owens has been fielding calls all week." Marcus nodded slowly. What started as damage control became something bigger. It always does when you lead with principle instead of profit. The Reed family returned to Bellamy's for the first time since October. Joy, now a few inches taller, skipped through the entrance, holding her father's hand. Elijah toddled beside Camille, chattering excitedly about the fancy restaurant. Brandon was at the hostess stand. When he saw them, his face transformed, not with fear, but with genuine joy. "The Reed family. Welcome back." Joy looked up at him curiously, recognizing something familiar but not quite placing it. "We have your table ready," Brandon said warmly. "Right by the fireplace, just like you deserve." Marcus met his eyes and saw something he hadn't seen 6 months ago. Peace. The kind that comes from doing the hard work of change. They were led to the best table in the house. The one with the perfect view, the comfortable seating, the ideal lighting. Josh appeared moments later with a warm smile. "Mr. and Mrs. Reed, and these must be Joy and Elijah. I've heard so much about you. You remember us?" Joy asked, delighted. "Of course I do. You drew those amazing magic fish." Joy's face lit up. "I still have that picture. It's on my wall at home." Throughout the evening, the service was flawless, but more than that, it was human. Vincent personally came out to greet them, presenting a special dessert he'd created just for the occasion. Nina sent over a complimentary appetizer. The staff moved through the dining room with confidence and warmth, treating every table, whether it was a couple celebrating an anniversary or a family with restless toddlers, with equal care and attention. Camille squeezed Marcus's hand under the table. "This is what you envisioned, isn't it?" "It's better than what I envisioned, because it's real." As they finished their meal, Marcus noticed something remarkable. The dining room was more diverse than it had been 6 months ago. Black families, Asian couples, Latino groups, people of all backgrounds and income levels, sharing space, sharing food, sharing joy. This was what hospitality was supposed to look like. What happened at Bellamy's didn't stay at Bellamy's. The story spread through the restaurant industry like wildfire, not as a scandal, but as a blueprint. Within 3 months, all 14 Bellamy's locations had implemented the same training. Within 6 months, Reed Hospitality Group had extended the program to every property they owned, 47 restaurants across 12 states. Other companies took notice. Corporate trainers began citing the Bellamy's model as an example of how to handle discrimination incidents with both accountability and restoration. Hospitality schools added case studies about the transformation to their curricula. Brandon became an unexpected advocate. He began speaking at industry conferences, sharing his story with raw honesty, how his unconscious biases had nearly destroyed his career, and how deliberate training and accountability had saved it. His talks were uncomfortable, vulnerable, and powerful. He didn't position himself as a hero, but as a cautionary tale and a testament to the possibility of change. "I can't undo what I did," he told an audience of restaurant managers in Seattle, "but I can make sure I never do it again. And I can help others recognize their own blind spots before they cause the same harm I did." Helen Tate became a regular again, bringing friends and family. She wrote a follow-up review on Yelp that went viral. "6 months ago, I walked out of Bellamy's heartbroken. Today, I'm walking proud. This is what accountability looks like. This is what change looks like. Support businesses that do the hard work." The story of what happened at Bellamy's isn't just about a restaurant or a CEO or a waiter who made a terrible mistake. It's about something much deeper. The choice we all face every single day about how we see people, how we treat them, and who we decide to become when we're confronted with our own failures. Marcus Reed could have destroyed Brandon that night. He had every right to. He had the power, the moral authority, and the justification. But he chose a different path, not because he was soft, but because he understood something fundamental. Punishment without opportunity for growth doesn't create change. It just creates bitterness. Brandon could have remained defensive, made excuses, blamed his upbringing or his training or the culture he was raised in. But he didn't. He chose to look directly at his prejudices, name them, and do the painful work of transformation. That choice, that willingness to be uncomfortable, is what made his redemption possible. And the rest of the staff? They could have stayed silent, protected themselves, claimed ignorance. Instead, they became part of the solution. They held each other accountable. They learned together. They built something better. That Friday evening in October didn't just change Bellamy's, it changed everyone who was part of it. Brandon learned that redemption is possible but not easy. Marcus learned that leadership sometimes means extending grace when you have every right to withhold it. The staff learned that culture is something they create together, not something that's imposed on them. And Joy, she learned that her father was the kind of man who stays calm in the face of disrespect, who leads with dignity rather than anger, who believes in people's capacity to change. Those lessons will shape her far more than any business degree or professional achievement ever could. The most powerful moment of that night wasn't the confrontation. It wasn't the reveal or the apology or even the transformation that followed. It was the moment Marcus decided to stay when he could have left, demanded his money back, made a scene, called the press. He stayed. He stayed because leaving would have been easier, and easy doesn't create change. He stayed because his children were watching and he wanted them to see strength that doesn't require cruelty. He stayed because he knew that real transformation happens in conversation, not in condemnation. That's the invitation this story offers all of us, to stay in the hard conversations, to remain present in uncomfortable moments, to believe that people and systems can change if we're willing to do the work. So here's the question: what are you going to do with this story? Are you going to let it inspire you for 5 minutes and then scroll to the next video? Or are you going to let it challenge you, change you, move you toward action? Maybe you're a Brandon, someone who realizes you've been carrying unconscious biases and you're ready to confront them. Start today. Seek out perspectives different from your own. Read books, watch documentaries, have conversations that make you uncomfortable. Growth is waiting on the other side. Maybe you're a Marcus, someone who's been disrespected, overlooked, underestimated. Your dignity in those moments matters. Your choice to stay, to speak, to demand better, that's leadership. Don't let anyone convince you that your presence in any space needs justification. Maybe you're Nina or Vincent or Josh, someone who sees injustice but isn't sure if it's your place to intervene. It is your place, every time. Your voice, your action, your willingness to stand up, that's what tips the balance. Or maybe you're Helen Tate, someone who's been comfortable staying silent but is finally ready to use your privilege, your voice, your influence to create change. Welcome to work. We need you. This week, do one thing differently. Just one. Have a conversation with someone whose background is different from yours. Call out a biased joke instead of laughing nervously. Leave a review highlighting how a business made you feel valued. Mentor someone who doesn't look like you. Question an assumption you've been carrying. One action, one choice, one moment of courage, because that's how culture changes, not through grand gestures or viral moments, but through a million small decisions made by ordinary people who decided that dignity matters more than comfort. Bellamy's is still open. Marcus still visits every Friday. Brandon still greets guests at the door. The work continues, imperfect, ongoing, real, and somewhere in Portland tonight a family will walk into that restaurant. Maybe they'll be dressed casually. Maybe they'll have kids. Maybe they'll look around nervously, wondering if they belong, and they'll be greeted with warmth. Seated at a good table, served with respect, treated like they matter, because they do. And that's not the end of the story, that's just the beginning. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.